What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Money Goal. Today I have Yasmin with me.
Hi.
Hello, Yasmin. Welcome
Hello. Thank you for having me.
back. All right, what are we talking about today?
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Gaji.
Okay.
So, in your opinion,
Yep.
do you think we're underpaid here in Malaysia?
Malaysians?
Yeah,
A lot of people seem to think so.
I
right?
agree.
A lot of people
Yeah,
seem to think
I
so.
think so.
Okay, but I think your perception of it really depends on your group of friends, right?
You
So-
think so? Just
yeah.
amongst your group of friends?
Yeah. Okay, so this is an example. My group of friends, a lot of them are on pretty high salaries. So then my perception of things were Malaysians earn a lot of money. But I know the reality is not the case.
Right.
Yeah, so people who are, in a group where everyone's not earning that much, they would think, oh, everyone's underpaid. But I do think that Malaysia has an income problem. For sure.
I
overall.
think like one of the biggest complaints is that your salary doesn't match your effort.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you,
Okay.
do you think? Do you agree? Did you ever feel like that at any point?
Sort of.
Right.
I think I'm a very I don't know if capitalist is the right word for this, but I mean effort doesn't really equate to your pay, right? Or how much value you create, right? Yeah, it's basically about how much value you create, not about how much you work or how hard you work and stuff like that. That's pretty much what I feel about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And also I guess it depends on like your industry, which is why like I'm
Yep.
it might be a bit controversial, but like I feel like it's pretty healthy to share with your coworkers like what your gaji is.
Yeah. Wait, did I do the episode with you or was it Aisha? I did say this.
Yeah, we talked about it in like a
Yeah,
previous
yeah, yeah.
episode.
I do
Can't
think it's
remember,
healthy.
but
I think
producer knows. Producer knows. And yeah, I think it's something that's really, really healthy. Because like you also, I guess, talk to each other about like your work, right? So you sort of like compare and contrast like everyone's efforts with like what they are, what they're making,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. I
Okay.
think so. It's only bad for HR.
Yeah.
Sharing salary is only bad
Yes.
for HR.
Yeah. It's awkward.
Yeah.
It's really, really awkward.
Yeah. But I do think that you should talk about it. At least you know your benchmark, right, for what you're doing. Especially if you have friends, ex-colleagues even, who are doing the same thing with you in different companies, then it's good to know. Even from different industries. Like you said, I think industry plays a huge
Huge
role.
part. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you know a friend who's doing the exact same thing as you and is getting paid more in a different industry, then it's good for you because then you think, okay, how can I get into that industry?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I try to be as fair as possible. So like obviously I'm not comparing my salary to like my friends who are in consultancy. That's one way to make me depressed. Obviously. But yeah, considering I am in broadcasting, I compare with my peers who are in broadcasting as well. And I think that's like you get like a even level playing field that
Yep.
way,
Yep.
right? And then you can kind of see like, okay, this is where I can aspire to, or like, oh, okay, these are my colleagues who are like around about the same level, right?
Yep. And things change, right? I mean, I think 10, 15 years ago, oil and gas companies used to be the biggest in the world. So they will pay the most, right? Regardless of whether you're working offshore or whether you're doing marketing, HR, sales even, you will still generally get paid the most. And then these days, is of course, tech companies. I've seen Americans talk about their salaries in companies like Netflix, Google and stuff, and it's crazy. And it's
Yeah.
purely just because of industry. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about exposure pay,
Okay.
which is something that it may not be termed in that way, but it's something that a lot of people in entertainment or in broadcasting, such as myself, hear a lot.
Okay.
So the idea is that, okay, you get paid a little low, but your exposure, the contacts that you build, the experiences that you get, sort of like make up for that low payment.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think it's bad. Of
Yeah.
course. Yeah. I think people.
Yeah.
I've seen like people looking for wedding photographers, and then if they are a bit famous on Instagram, like 1,000 followers, they're like, "Hey, can you take photos for me? I can't pay, but I'll post on Instagram and say you did it." I think it's just an excuse not to pay.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's just like on a freelance standpoint. Right? That's freelancing.
Why does it happen in like beyond that as well?
I mean, yeah. Yes. I cannot speak for everybody, but
Okay.
yeah, it's something that's really common that you hear in this industry in particular. I'm not sure about other industries. Actually, maybe most maybe a lot of corporate jobs, they get a lot of that as well.
Okay.
Like you're kind of like, you sell your soul, but yeah, you sell your soul, you work crazy hours and put in crazy effort, and in return you are supposed to be, I guess, yeah, you're supposed to build your network and all of that, and that's something like you can't, get anywhere else.
All right.
Kononia is supposed to be like,
And that's why they pay you less.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's one of the justifications that they use. That it's like, well, we're making up for the low pay by offering you this and this and this and this and this, and then you sort of get trapped into this thinking of, okay, I may not be paid a lot, but they're right. Like, I can't build this network outside of this job. I, can't get this exposure outside of this job.
Right.
Yeah. So
So you're
that's
telling
like the
them I
idea.
can't pay my bills with exposure then.
Yeah, that's
Unfortunately, TNB only takes ringgit.
Yes.
But having said that, I do think that, especially when you're just starting out your career, there is a case where you might want to forego a bit of salary for growth. Right? So let's say you get two different offers. One is higher paying, but not much growth. And the other one is maybe a bit lower salary, but you see better growth potential there. You can consider taking the lower salary one. That's something that I would recommend actually, when you're just starting out,
Interesting.
if you have enough money to survive in the
Right.
first place.
But at what point does that become exploitation?
Yeah, so that's the thing. I think this is something that you got to decide for yourself. Of
Yeah.
course, you cannot take that forever.
Yeah.
Right? There has to be a point where after a certain level, you will get rewarded for it. I'll just give you an example, right? A career like sales, where you're starting out, the base salary is really, really low, right? But you get a commission. So the more you learn and everything, if you're joining a company with a low base salary, but they have a lot of really good salespeople, a lot of really good leaders and structures that you can learn from, and then that would result in you eventually becoming a good salesperson who then earns a higher commission, then that's something that you can justify. But if it's a flat base pay, then I think the trade-off between salary and growth, you got to decide where the buck ends, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, where the buck stops.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I'm trying not to get personal. But yeah, no, of course. Like, I think at some point, we've all heard that trade-off, right? Like, it's okay, we'll give you like 1.5K, 2K a month. But you'll learn a lot here, and like you'll meet a lot of people here, and you'll be able to experience a lot of things here. But after you develop your skills and develop yourself, like you gotta say no to like all of that, right? There will come a point where you're gonna be like, actually, I feel like I've learned enough, and I've been doing this work for a couple of years or whatever. So like something's gotta give, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how can you grow your career and your income without burnout? Oh my God, why did you assign me this one? Why are we talking about this?
Oh.
I need people who have the most experience.
Yeah, very
So
experienced.
it feels like a very personal thing for you.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not just, I mean, obviously I'm not the only person in the world or, working in this particular career path that feels that way. It doesn't matter if you're freelancing, you're working corporate in an office at a 9-to-5 desk job. Like everyone experiences burnout.
Yep.
And at some point, for me personally, at some point, okay, say you chart your growth like on a chart, right? Say you chart your growth. At some point, you will sort of stagnate.
Yep.
Yeah, but you will plateau, and that leads to stagnation. And obviously, in terms of like motivation as well, it's so hard when you're earning a certain level of income.
Yep.
When you realize yourself as well that like, I'm not learning anything anymore.
Yep.
I'm not, experiencing anything different, and my income is like staying exactly as it was.
That's the time to go.
Yep, that's the time to go.
Okay, so again, I haven't worked in corporate for a long time. I've only quit my job 2 times because I only had 2 jobs, right?
Right.
But both times I quit when I felt like that.
Right.
In my first company, I was learning a lot at first. I was getting promotions and then promotion again. But at a certain point, after 2.5 years, I felt like, okay, I don't think there's a lot more for me to learn. I'm sort of doing the same things now. And there's nowhere within this company that I want to go, right? And then the salary jumps as well. I was just thinking, how much more can I get, right? So that's when I thought, okay, it's time to go. Yeah, it's similar for my last job as well. I think I told this story before, but my boss asked me in a review, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Let's develop you there. And I was thinking, not here. No, I felt like I just wasn't learning anymore. I just felt like, there's not much more to give. And that was the time for me to go. So I for one, I'm really not afraid to leave when things aren't right. But I know a lot of people stay. And I think that is when you can really get stuck.
Yes, yeah. But I think there are certain situations or certain circumstances that, sort of forces people to stay. For example, I mean, you and I, we're unmarried, I still live with my family.
Yeah.
You don't live with your family anymore. But I mean, those particular circumstances allow us to be able to quit, quite easily and quite quickly if we want to. But of course, there are people who have families to take care of, bills to pay, debts to settle. So they might not necessarily have that option, right? So if that is the case,
I agree.
And you can't, sit your boss down and get them to increase your income, how can you make the most of what you've got? I think that's so hard, actually.
Yeah, that's super hard. That's the thing. Okay, from my experience at least, maybe I just don't have enough experience in corporate. The only way to get what you want is with leverage.
Yep.
And the only way to have leverage is not threatening, but them knowing that you will leave if you don't get what you want.
Yeah.
But the only way you can do that is if you are willing to leave if you don't get what you want, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the thing. Unfortunately, okay, there will be some companies that are really nice who will just reward you based on what you deserve.
Yeah.
But from my experience, at least, when you have leverage, that's when they will give you what you want. Yeah. But I also want to say, I guess there's 2 lessons from this. One is you do want to take risks when you're young. That's why I always tell people, take risks when you're young, when you don't have a lot of commitments or responsibilities. Once you're older, it's going to be tougher for sure. So any big career change that you want to do when you're young, that's the time to do it. And number 2, this is also why having savings, having an emergency fund is so important. And people think about it like, oh, what if my car breaks down and things like that? But it goes beyond that, right? If I have 10 years worth of my expenses saved up, like if I don't have an income, I can survive for 10 years, you won't be scared of quitting your job anymore. Yeah, that's why I think it's extremely important to have money saved up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, your salary is such a huge incentive as to what, I mean, obviously, right? When you first apply to your job, those are one of the major questions that you have. I don't think anybody will go into a job interview not asking what your pay is going to be, or what you will definitely state what your expectations are. And if you're working at a company for a couple of years, you also have an expectation for there to be a certain increment, right, of some sort, because that is incentive, right? That is motivation. Whether people like to admit it or not, maybe, if it's a passion thing for you and you genuinely love what you're doing, then maybe it's not that big of an incentive, but it is an incentive, regardless of whether or not you actually love the job you do or you don't. Okay, let's move on to the stories. Okay,
let's do it.
Alrighty. So the first story is, when I found out my colleague with less experience was earning 800 ringgit more, I felt crushed. I kept replaying every project I had done, every late night, every bit of extra effort. But instead of stewing in frustration, I started researching, checking salary reports, asking mentors, and practicing how to bring up my pay. When appraisal season came, I asked for a meeting with my boss. I came prepared with numbers and results, not complaints. 2 weeks later, I got a raise. That day, I realized that confidence isn't just about speaking up. It's about backing yourself with facts. How can you turn salary envy into salary empowerment?
Doing just that, basically.
Yeah, it's literally doing just that.
I think at work, you have to ask. You have to ask for what you want. You can't just wait. I think some people have the mindset where, okay, if I just put my head down, I just work.
If I just prove myself.
My boss will notice me, HR will notice me, I'm going to get a raise. Unfortunately, that's not how it's going to work. if let's say Yasmin and I, we are in the same team and we have a boss, right? If I demand for a raise, I say, give me a raise this year or I'm quitting. And then Yasmin is just quiet. Who's the boss going to give a raise to? Me, for sure.
Yeah.
Because they think Yasmin is happy, Emir is not happy, let's give him the raise. And it's just going to keep going like that. So I think at work, you don't have to be aggressive about it. You don't have to be so demanding about it, but you have to ask. You have to let your boss know that you want what you want.
If you don't ask, you don't know.
Exactly. Or you won't even get it if you don't ask. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, second story. When promotions were slow, I turned my weekend photography hobby into a small business. It started with free shoots for friends, then weddings, and eventually paid corporate gigs. Within a year, my camera had earned me more than my annual increment. The extra income gave me freedom. I didn't feel trapped by my day job anymore. But more importantly, it reminded me that sometimes the skills you overlook can become your biggest asset. What's one skill you can monetize today without quitting your job? Ooh, that's so good.
There's so many things actually.
Yeah. There's so many things.
I feel like these days, because of the internet and everything, you can really monetize nearly every single skill. Yeah. I saw on social media before in Malaysia, someone was doing a class about how to be a magician. And I was like, who wants to be a magician?
Yeah.
And then I saw the replies and the answers. A lot of people want and they're willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The craziest things I would never think of. Everyone thinks like the standard stuff, software programming, design work. Yeah, of course you can monetize.
Yeah.
Those are good skills.
Yeah.
But literally anything that you think you're good at, you can try.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
what's yours? What would you do?
Oh gosh. What would I do?
Book reviews. You could do that.
Book reviews.
There's a bit of a market for that.
Book reviews? Yeah, it's not really a thing here in Malaysia.
That's what you think though.
Yeah, see that's the thing. If you don't know,
a magician, he probably thought that.
Yeah, probably thought.
And then his friend was like, just try it, man.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different avenues that you can choose from. Like you said, right? There's like more of the techie stuff, which is like coding, building websites for people. Answering,
Surveys?
Like, what's it? Oh my God. Customer support, support. Like those are like tech. And then you have like things like tutoring or photography, like we just mentioned in the story. Yeah, photography, videography.
There are actually websites where you can teach languages.
Yes. Yeah.
So you can teach English.
Lingoda, like you get matched up with like a tutor, right?
Yeah.
And the tutor isn't necessarily like qualified. Like they're not like teachers at like universities. Sometimes they're literally just people who want to find a side gig.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah.
So many opportunities.
Yeah, but
you do anything. There are some that are better than others. So maybe if you want to learn something to monetize, then definitely the very in-demand skills. Digital marketing, I think that's very in demand.
Yeah.
Coding, software programming, these days is so
Python.
popular.
Yeah.
But that is if there's something you're doing purely to make money. You're trying to learn it to make money, then look at those things. Google online, see what's in demand. But otherwise, if you want to try and monetize something that you already have, just think about what you're good at. I think a lot of people, they get very into something like me. I got very into personal finance, but initially I didn't want to start a blog or a channel because I thought, surely everyone knows this, right? Because I know this. Then I wrote something and I shared it with my family and they were like, oh, this is so informational. I did not know this at all. And I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, it's the same with you, you probably think like, books, no one's interested.
No one cares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a market out there.
You never know. You never know.
Try it.
Anyway, before we wrap things up, do you have any last words of advice?
Right. I think income is the most important pillar in personal finance, right? It is the most important thing. You can try and save, you can try and invest, budget, whatever that is. If your income is low, things are just going to be tough. So it's definitely an area where you need to sort of pay more attention to, especially as someone who is still young, right? So do what you can. I think work on your primary job. That is probably the easiest way for you to increase your income if you're thinking long term, but also look at side things. Yeah, like we were just talking about.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Nice talking to you again, Yasmin. Hope you
Thank
guys
you.
enjoyed this episode and see you guys in the next one. Peace.